Welcome to Alienating the Audience, an audio infusion of science fiction for the discerning sci-fi fan. I'm Andrew Heaton, the thinking man's nerd. And today we're going to do something different on the show than usual. We're not going to pick an author or a theme. We're going to do a deep dive on a character. Spock. What makes him tick? What's his arc? What's he about? And afterwards, Nick Sperduti and I will review our recent trip to the planet Krypton. Grab your tribble, because we're about to get super Vulcaned up. My guest today is Mr. John Champion. He is the host of the Mission Log podcast on the Roddenberry Podcast Network, and you're like an archduke of Star Trek fans. I don't know where I'd put you. Like, I guess I should use a Star Trek term. You're like you're a very minimum of vice admiral.
Vice admiral is fine.
Like, and that's minimum. Like, you might well be a grand admiral.
You know, I occupy a weird space that I really like. I mean, just to be perfectly honest, I like exactly where I am. So I've never worked on Star Trek, although in a parallel universe that could have happened. I auditioned to be Wesley Crusher.
Wow.
When I was 15 years old.
Do you see pictures of Wes Wheaton and you're like, oh, it could have been me?
Yeah, well, he and I had a funny...
You glaring at him from across the bar.
Yeah. So when I was 15, when I did not get the role, there was a little bit of bitterness, a little bit of anger. Not because...
That's how I feel about Brad Pitt. If it hadn't been Brad Pitt, it would have been me.
It would have been you.
But I wish him the best.
Yeah. I mean, when you're 15 and you're an actor and you're just trying to get a gig, you want the gig. And when it's something cool like Star Trek, you really want the gig. So, of course, I hated Will Wheaton. Reality, I do not hate Will Wheaton. He's actually an awesome guy.
So my surname is Heaton, and I think I read somewhere that we're arch nemesis with the Wheatons. And I was like, all right, random thing I read on Twitter. Okay, like death to the Wheaton clan. Yeah. Go Heaton clan. Yes. We're the high town, you're the wheat town. Screw you guys.
Ooh, nice. Nicely done. Well, I sent him an email years later and just said, hey, here's a funny story about this. And we just had a good laugh about it. And since then, I've seen him several times at conventions. We've interviewed him.
Very, very plugged into the sci-fi community.
Oh, yeah. Well, he really embraced it. My impression is that, I had this very difficult time being a kid, really under the microscope on this show with a lot of attention around it, and then kind of had to find himself again after that.
Kind of kicked. I want to say he kicked at it for a little bit.
Yeah.
And then went, what? Actually, it's kind of cool being the Nerd King. And not a bad life.
Now he writes and makes appearances and kind of plays up that history that he has and does fabulously well with it. And good for him.
I've got all these like random things, like random accolades that I would like to have that are different. Like other people, I want to get the Pulitzer. And I'm like, I want to be knighted in the small country of Hutt River in Australasia. Yeah. I want to get like the town key to Alva, Oklahoma, become a Kentucky colonel, and be a background actor in Star Trek. At some point, I just want to have a picture. It could be a profile shot. I'm at the back and blurry. I understand how extras work, but I'm on the Defiant, or I'm something like that. That would be great. So
I would like to pull for that. Although I don't know. Like I was saying, I have this weird place where I've never been on Star Trek, but. And I've been a fan for all my life. I mean, since I was a little kid, I've been aware of Star Trek.
For people that can't physically be here with us, I feel like we are in a cathedral of Star Trek.
And that's the thing.
You have so much. It's so cool. I came in and just lit up. I got to sit in the captain's chair. Right. Yes. There's like a whole museum display you've got of action figures and bat lifts and things. It's impressive.
Yeah. So here I am not working in the franchise, but I work for Roddenberry, and Roddenberry does not own Star Trek, but Roddenberry created Star Trek. So we're part of the family in this weird way. And it's nice because I got a foot firmly in the fan world and a foot firmly in the professional world. Sometimes doesn't actually benefit me. Like things are difficult trying to get interviews for Mission Log. Well, Star Trek is owned and operated by CBS. So if you want anything, you got to go through CBS. You can't always just call up and say, yes, Roddenberry, so come on down. Doesn't always work like that. But there are still a lot of privileges that come with being part of Roddenberry. Nice. It's got, like you said, we got a captain's chair in the lobby.
Right.
Not every place gets to have that. And if you told me when I was 10 years old, you're going to work in a place that has a captain's chair in the lobby, I would not have believed you.
Conversely, me as a 10-year-old would be astonished that I don't work in a place that has a captain's chair in it.
Yeah.
I would have, like 10-year-old me would be like, you don't have a dog or a captain's chair? What have you done with your miserable life? I am most intrigued to talk to you about Spock and his relationship with McCoy and Kirk. And you said something interesting before we started. You said that you thought that they represented pathos, ethos, and logos. And I wanted you to break that down.
Yeah, so there's two ways really to look at these characters, and I think classically a lot of people look at it as the Freudian id, ego, superego. But
in the breakdown there, just because we can really suss this out, id, ego, and superego is the thing I want, the thing I wish I want, and the thing society wants. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah. And we kind of discussed that a little bit on the show, but then we one of our listeners, I think, said, "Hey, have you ever considered this?" And then, boy, did that open things up. Then we started looking at the persuasions of argument. So ethos, pathos, logos.
Okay.
And easy enough, Spock is logos. He is, logical decision-making or appealing to a logical argument. Pathos would be the emotional argument. So we'll pin that on McCoy. And ethos is ethical decision-making. And we'll apply that to Kirk, of course. And that just made so much sense for the way that we parsed Star Trek and how these characters behave, and even so much to the extent that we did T-shirts with ethos, pathos, logos, silhouettes of those three on the transporter, and then just labeled as ethos, pathos, logos instead of Kirk, Spock, and McCoy.
I do think is right, because in virtually there's so many situations in TOS where a ship is going to crash into a planet and kill a bunch of people or something like that. Yeah. And Spock is like, well, logically, we should just shoot the ship. There's only 50 people on it. And then McCoy will go, damn it, you can't kill 50 people just because it's convenient.
Exactly.
And then Kirk will go, what if we don't have to?
Yeah.
And he'll come up with some way to say, now the ship's going to have a parachute or something.
But look at the classic ultimate example of that, City on the Edge of Forever. Here's the love of Kirk's life. Here's a guy who's married to his job, married to his ship, but boy, falls in love with Edith Keeler, and you buy it. You absolutely buy that they have this relationship and that he's smitten with her and she's smitten with him. And at the end of the show, after Spock has explained, she has to die, or everything that you know, the world that you understand, fails to exist. It will not happen because the Nazis will win World War II, because America doesn't go into battle, and that's it. There is no future for democracy. There are no starships. There is no federation. That's it. We're done. Very logical argument to say that if this one person doesn't die, then billions of people in the future that we know won't live, or at least they won't live in the future that we understand. But at the end of the episode, when Kirk is stopped from saving Edith Keeler, it's McCoy. McCoy was the one ready to jump in there, and McCoy says, "Hey, do you know what you've done?" And Spock says, "He knows, Doctor. He knows." So Kirk had that moment to make a decision. He did it. It's chilling for the audience. It's chilling for them. And you can see how worked up McCoy is and what's going on, because he's all passion.
Yeah.
He 100%. He's all emotion about it. And his gut instinct is to go save that woman who's about to get killed. But Kirk and Spock are the ones who refrain, because Spock knows logically he has to. Kirk knows ethically he has to. And it's just one of the all-time, it's not just a great moment in a Star Trek, it's a great moment on TV. And it's very, almost like a Twilight Zone moment, where you're tempting fate and you have power in your hands, but you actually have to do the thing that's right. It's the ultimate expression of the trolley problem.
Yeah.
But in a really emotional way, and the stakes made even bigger than what you see in the trolley problem.
I also think that that's a good episode that's emblematic of the actual Captain Kirk leadership style. Yeah. So I grew up watching TNG and Deep Space Nine, and I saw the TOS films, but I didn't go back and watch TOS episodes until I was in my late 20s, early 30s. And so I knew of Kirk either through the movies or through like The Simpsons parodying Kirk. And whenever Kirk is parodied in pop culture, he is always a kind of lecherous frat boy in command of a ship who's just, all he's doing is like trolling the galaxy for green poon.
Right.
And that's the
But it's really unfair, though.
Yeah,
it really,
absolutely.
when you go back and you watch, and particularly the first couple of seasons, you just go, wow. Shatner is a great actor when he is given the chance to be a great actor, when he's got the right director in place to bring that out. And yeah, there were times in TOS, Gamesters of Triskelion, my heart still breaks for Shayna in her tinfoil bikini left on Triskelion, because they had a bond.
Wait, is that where the brains are gambling couplars on everybody?
Quatlus. Yeah. 50 Quatlus on the newcomer.
I mentioned in a previous podcast, she might have the singularly most revealing and unappealing costume in all of Star Trek history. It's like a tinfoil diaper. There's nothing,
pretty much.
You see a lot of flesh, and yet I'm not aroused.
Yeah, right. But my heart breaks for her. They had this bond, and then Kirk's like, yeah, I gotta go. Like, no. She needs saving. She can have a better life. She really can. But, those moments are few and far between. And it's really only when you get into the third season, you feel like they're doing things sort of by rote. And they're just like, oh, yeah, they go to a planet, things happen, he falls in love, they leave, on to the next mission. It didn't feel like that in the first couple of seasons. So I think it's a bit of an unfair reputation that Shatner is or Kirk is this, cowboy who's just off to get laid.
He is very confident in his decisions, and he is very assertive, which I do not think are bad qualities to have in a Starfleet captain. Yeah. But he's not like drinking whiskey on the bridge, like scan for cheerleaders.
No, that's not happening. Yeah.
Well, then, like with Spock, then, because Spock represents clearly the logic and the logos, and I think he has a fascinating plot arc over the course of Star Trek history, which continues to be modified somewhat.
Sure.
I will argue in the future poorly as we go with this. But how do you see Spock starting out just in TOS? What's the plot arc or the character arc for him?
So I think that's what's sort of great about Star Trek is that in TOS, you only get a few hints of who Spock is on the inside. Early on in The Naked Now, you have this scene of, they're all infected by this virus. It's making them sort of act out. So all the id is coming out of each one of them. And Spock, Nimoy, a credit to his acting, has this great scene on his own, hiding himself in the conference room, then just beating his head against the wall that he can't keep control of his emotions. It's a wonderful, heartbreaking scene, and he plays it absolutely perfectly. You don't really get to that again until the introduction of Pon farr, hey, what, in Amok Time. So Spock has to go back to Vulcan and fight to the death because he's determined to be married off to this woman, but watch out, Stan got in the way. So it's this whole...
And we have the gradual introduction of his humanity, because early on in the series, he just mentions that he has a human ancestor. Like Kirk brings up, like, you're part human, right? And he's like, I have a human ancestor, and he won't elaborate. It's his mom.
It's his mom.
He's half human.
And they introduce her in Journey to Babel, and the tension is there right from the start. But the tension is there between Spock and his dad. So what we get with Spock and his mother is that she wants to have this relationship with him. She's got his back no matter what. But that TOS Spock is not showing his emotions to anybody, no matter what, except for the cage. But we kind of retcon why that Spock is the way that he is. Now, here's the thing. I think the beauty of it is that Dorothy Fontana laid down the bare bones of what makes Spock tick. And every now and then you get a little hint, a little wink, a joke or something like that TOS Spock would always deny. I don't know. I didn't show emotion. I didn't just make a joke. I just said a thing. Now I'm going to walk away. But 10 years later, you get to Star Trek: The Motion Picture. And that is a really changed Spock. And I love how you open with him trying to purge every last emotion out of himself because he's conflicted by this.
Kolinar, I can't remember what.
Kolinar, yeah, exactly.
By the way, I can't remember my blood type, John.
Yeah, but you remember that.
The term from Star Trek,
yeah.
I don't know where I parked, what I had for lunch.
But that.
Bring up Star Trek trivia,
yeah. Oh, God, it gets worse for me because, these are the shows that I grew up with. And now they're just trying to be on top week to week. week of trivia and story elements. It's all out of my head in a week, and then that gets confused with the important things you're supposed to do as a functioning adult.
Yeah.
No, that doesn't happen.
Adultism, yeah.
But you get to a Spock who's very different. He's tried so hard to purge that out of his system, and comes back to the Enterprise, and he's all logic, doesn't want to hobnob, doesn't want to be friends with his friends anymore. But V'ger changes him, and there's that moment in that movie that I love so much, after he's had sort of a brief meld with what V'ger is, and he's laying in sickbay, and he holds Kirk's hand, and he says, this simple expression is beyond V'ger's comprehension. And that's the moment that Spock realizes, I'm not a complete person at all if I don't have an emotional life, if I don't have friends, and if I don't appreciate that. Then I'm no better than this robot, this alien intelligence that's just out there sucking up knowledge in the universe. And I always contend that, that rebirth of Spock in that moment is what gives us the Spock who we get in Star Trek II. That's the Spock that sacrifices himself to his friends. That, and obviously he literally gets reborn after that, but he's mentally, he's been through all those steps. So then we get yet another changed Spock, but ever since the V'ger moment, this is a Spock who is more at ease with himself. He's able to realize that, the friends are the family that he picks. And to me, that speaks to me as a very humanist message that Star Trek embraces. Star Trek embraces that anyway, because it is about the relationships. It is about finding a place in the universe without some sort of, divine intervention or revelation saying no, you have to believe this, follow this holy book and it will get you there. No. Star Trek's not about that. It's about saying we're out here to find meaning. We're out here to find our place and realizing that we're insignificant and we have so much to learn. So everybody's on that mission. But Spock specifically is on this mission to realize, okay, but who am I in relation to all these other people? Because I don't quite fit on Vulcan. I don't quite fit just as a human like everybody else. But I can carve out a meaning because I take meaning out of my friends, out of my work, out of the journey. And it's a pretty beautiful thing.
Well put. I really like that.
Thank you.
I'll add to that. I think that you see a kind of young Spock, old Spock moment in Reunification Parts 1 and 2, where it's now in TNG. Leonard Nimoy does a wonderful elder statesman cameo, or our special guest for 2 episodes, where Picard and the crew have to go to Romulus because Spock is attempting to literally reunify the Romulan Empire with Vulcan. Big undertaking. Yes, dream big, Spock.
But that's the Spock who's at ease.
Yes, and that's one of the things when he meets Data. I feel like it's because Data and Spock are actually kind of juxtaposed.
Yeah.
They're meeting in the same place when we find them, but they're coming from different persuasions. So Data is a Pinocchio character. Data is an artificial entity. I will argue he has emotions, but they're muted.
Same. He totally does.
And he is attempting to expand those, and he wants to be human. He's a toy that wants to be a boy. Whereas Spock is part human and doesn't like it and would like to be more robotic.
Yeah.
And when he meets Data, they have a conversation where Data he says something and Spock goes, "I have no regrets." And there's just a palpable sense of he knows where he is in life.
Right.
He wants to be there. This is fine. This is all a part of the journey for him. And he's come to peace with his humanity.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of look at the Spock dealing with his emotions thing. Obviously, Star Trek has justified the Vulcan journey by saying their emotions were too out of hand, they were too intense, so they decided millennia ago to suppress this, and that's the only way
they're hyper British,
right? Yeah.
They're 3 times the normal British amount, which is why it would be the most insufferable species within the Federation. I actually quite like it in Enterprise, where you get this palpable sense of condescension from the Vulcans, and I'm like,
I love
they
it.
would be insufferable if you were
Yeah.
actually interacting with them, unless you had like a Spock character who was kind of cuddly.
Yeah, but that was cool for them to do, to show how Vulcans dealing with the Federation, not even the Federation at that point, but Vulcans dealing with Starfleet at that early point would just be awful. And it's going to be, it will not be an easy road to just completely give over to like, oh, these are our best friends, and they suppress their emotions in a really weird way. But there's an interesting sort of thing about Vulcans. I mean, look, we say this on Mission Log all the time. There are no Vulcans, there is no Enterprise, there are no Klingons, there is no Federation. It's all us. It's all about us on Earth right now, whether it was in 1966 or here in 2019. So we're supposed to look at the Vulcans and go, what can we learn from them? What aspect of us is being reflected in the Vulcans, and what do we take from it? And in a good way, you can look at that and go, well, you know what? We probably do let our emotions dictate what we do too frequently. And wouldn't it be great if we could take a step back from the things that make us make stupid decisions and actually weigh out the logical side for once, and hopefully build a better world for everybody. All right. So I think that's a really noble thing about the Vulcans. But the downside of the Vulcans that we see in Spock actually reconciling his emotions, it's sort of like something happens to you personally. You know, you go through a bad breakup and you just go like, man, I wish I didn't have these emotions. I wish these negative emotions would just go away if only I could suppress them. But if you do that, you hurt yourself even more. You have to go through. You have to actually embrace the emotion. You actually have to sit in it and accept it for a while before you can actually move on. That's what makes you a stronger, better person, able to deal with the next thing.
I do not like the portrayal of Spock in the J.J. Abrams films. I call him emo Spock.
Yeah.
I'll say I think the actor does a good job. He does a magnificent job
Zachary Quinto is great.
Stepping into Leonard Nimoy's role. The new Spock did a very good job of. I mean, like you could have dropped him in into any point in the series, and you know, anybody that doesn't have 20/20 vision would not have known. That said, though, what I find so appealing about the Spock character as portrayed by Leonard Nimoy and the great and glorious arc that he have is that he is cold but not empathetic. He is sympathetic, but he is sympathetic but kind of unyielding, and he's not cuddly. He's not. But you know that he cares about you.
Sure.
And because he is so stiff upper lip, when he does have an emotional display, it is truly a thing to behold. There is great import to it. Like when in The Wrath of Khan, when he dies and says, Jim, I am and always will be your friend. It's like it's truly like that. But with the new Spock, he is constantly crying. And I'm like, well, the character's kind of ruined in my opinion, because he's no longer. He is now a very emotional, very passionate guy that's constantly displaying feelings, and that conflict is gone. And so I don't care for it.
Well, you nailed a problem that's, I think, a problem with all of those movies, which is they're constantly in a position of telling rather than showing. And it's like, have you really earned those moments where your Spock gets to cry, or where your Kirk gets to sacrifice himself by going into the radiation chamber? Did you actually earn those moments of showing this friendship, showing this bond, showing a crew out there doing their thing? And I sometimes they do, but most of the time I feel like they don't. And with Spock in particular, it's really difficult. Spock, the whole gimmick with Spock is he is a guy who is constantly suppressing his emotions. And unfortunately in the JJ movies, they can just kind of say, well, it's a parallel universe, it's a different timeline, so we can justify whatever we want to do. I think it's a mistake. It really is. You're partly speaking to the audience who already knows and loves Star Trek, but you're also speaking to this audience who doesn't know Star Trek. They're just there because this is the blockbuster movie of the summer. I want to go see it. And they could have held back on a bit of that. They could have dialed it back with Spock. They would come back at you and say, oh, but Spock has emotions. Vulcans have emotions. They just repress them. And in our timeline, this Spock, he's just cranked up a little bit because he didn't have the same exact journey that Spock in the other timeline had. And I'm like, yeah, but when it ends with him punching the hell out of a guy standing on a ship flying through San Francisco, and then that goes on for 5 or 10 minutes, it takes me out of it. It takes me out of the character. And it just becomes a guy who's lost it again and is beating the hell out of the bad guy.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. I'll add to that. Like, I think, have you seen the movie Trekkies?
Sure.
It's a wonderful documentary. For anybody listening that's not watched Trekkies, it's well worth watching. It's a lot of fun.
We have Roger Nygaard on our show, and he did Trekkies 1, Trekkies 2, and he's about to work on a third one.
Oh, nice. Yeah. It's a lot of fun. But there's a point in Trekkies, I don't remember who it is, but there's a character that describes Star Trek as the new mythology. And I was like, I think there's something to that. There's kind of a national mythology to Star Wars and Star Trek. Like if I were to say he's an Obi-Wan Kenobi character, people can infer, okay, he's kind of a rogue sage as opposed to Yoda, who's more of like a Buddha or something like that. Yeah. And I think that's the same with like Kirk, and I think Spock is probably, in terms of representing something more iconic than any of the other characters on TOS, because he is the embodiment of logic. If we were going to have if you and I were putting together a freshman year math for creative people, and we were just going to do a lesson on logical fallacies, we would probably put Spock on the PowerPoint presentation.
See, what's fun about Spock and what's fun about Vulcans who use logic is that they will use logical justification even when they break out of a thing that is logical,
which would also be insufferable.
It would be, but it's kind of nice to see. It's like when Spock, what is it? Instead of lying, he exaggerated, or something that'll be, you ask Sarek about marrying Amanda. Well, it was the logical thing to do.
Right.
You're in love. Okay, come on. Yeah, you're in love with her. So that's why you married.
Fever.
Yeah, exactly.
Apparently you got kind of a fetish for humans. It's fine, man. Like, get your freak flag on.
Exactly.
Because you could, this is a hypothetical example, but I could see a situation where a Vulcan would go, they're like, why did you do it? Well, it's logical to do the traditions of your culture. No, it's not.
Right.
But they could go ahead and say that. Yeah. So they too are rationalizing. But as previously established, Vulcans are emotional, just like anybody else, and in fact they're meant to be more emotional than us, which is part of the reason that they're constantly suppressing that. What do you think about Sybok?
First of all, I think it's weird that they keep introducing characters that we knew nothing about, because we had Sybok, and you fast forward 20 years, and then you've got Michael Burnham, who's another member of the Spock family, the Sarek family.
Wait, who's Michael Burnham?
She's on Discovery.
Oh,
she
right.
Is
yes,
Spock's
I got to say I have something of a problem with that.
Adopted
it just never
sister.
comes up.
Yeah. I look. I like the idea of Star Trek having a mythology and having important characters, and I like the idea of being able to work in a Sarek or work in a Spock, but you don't have to keep coming back to the exact same characters to then force the importance of a new character.
Yeah,
I have a problem with that.
I think most people, if you're going to pick Star Trek movies people dislike, they tend to dislike the motion picture in The Final Frontier. I really enjoy The Final Frontier. I think it's a lot of fun. I enjoy, he wouldn't have to be Spock's brother, but I enjoy the unhinged Vulcan.
Yes.
Who's like, you know what?
Exactly.
Fuck it. I enjoy this. I'm going to take some nitrous oxide, just have a great old weekend.
Yeah.
I find that an intriguing character.
I think Star Trek V is a poorly made version of a great movie. I love the idea that they were taking on religion and belief and God. I love the idea that you have this, as you say, the unhinged Vulcan who can completely mix things up and throw a guy like Spock off his guard. There's a lot to like about that movie. There's a lot to discuss about that movie. I think Ken and I did a pretty good job in Mission Log of picking apart the things that we really liked. The production value is not... Look, it's not Shatner's fault.
Probably for the did Shatner write it? I know he directed it.
He directed it. He had influence on the writing.
He originally wanted it to be like actually God. Like God was imprisoned on the planet, and like Kirk had to rescue God.
Yeah.
And he was going to have all these rock monsters that he had to fight with to rescue God. They're like, we don't have the budget for the rock monsters, so it's just an alien. Like, it's better having aliens than actually God.
And here's what's interesting. Gene Roddenberry hated a lot of what was going on in the production of Star Trek V. And this was getting on toward the end of his life, and he was very much removed from Star Trek at that point. He was still a part of TNG, but the movies were really a Paramount thing. It was a Harv Bennett thing, and he didn't have the influence. So he was a consulting producer, which means that he could write memos and they may or may not read them.
Right.
For a guy who was interested in taking on religion, faith, and belief, and exploring these ideas. For a guy who was so interested in taking on these really heavy ideas, I'm surprised that he was so negative about that movie and its development, unless it was just a case of, well, I want to tell it specifically the way I want to tell it. That could have been it.
Yeah.
But you look back at the history of TOS, and you look at Who Mourns for Adonais, you look at even in the animated series, Magics of Magus 2 and How Sharper Than a Serpent's Tooth, it's a similar idea of the crew finding this thing that claims that it's God, and the crew going, you know what, we outgrew that. And we don't need you to tell us this because we're not going to worship you.
I won't worship any god. It causes pain.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You're a thing that can be studied, that can be measured and understood. So let's drop the God pretext. And you may be more powerful than us. You may be older than us. You may do things that we don't understand yet, but you are understandable. So Gene played with that idea a lot. Why he had such a problem with Star Trek V, not really sure.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like we've reached a good stopping point on the Spock arc, as we've finally got to Discovery. And unless I've not seen all of Discovery, so I haven't seen Spock's bit in that. Do we have any new insights into the character as a result of it?
We do. There are things that I hate. There are things that I love. I don't like the idea that overall Discovery feels like the only way to be Star Trek is to keep forcing in Spock, Sarek, et cetera, and then you have to justify your way.
Who instantly see my problem. This is my bugaboo with Star Trek is I'm fine with having crazy technology and like magical powers and things, but I want it to be consistent. Yeah. So when Sarek is like, "Oh, I can communicate with you telepathically from across the galaxy," I'm like, well, that would have been real helpful in any other number of situations that apparently Vulcans can do that's never been discussed before.
I can tell you quietly, between me and you and the tens of thousands of people who will hear this, there were people working on Discovery who were not crazy about that idea. Yeah. But, making TV is compromise, and sometimes you just got to go with an idea, even if it doesn't sit well with everybody. So, but yeah, I don't like that. I don't like the idea that you feel like you have to shoehorn these things in, because then you have to shoehorn your way out of those and get back to a place where at least the somewhat casual Star Trek fan can go, oh yeah, that jibes with what I know about Star Trek already. Mm-hmm. Now, I think they did a good job of the short Trek Q&A. It's Spock and number one stuck in an elevator, and it's pre the cage. So it's Spock's first day on the Enterprise as an ensign. And it's a 15-minute short. They get stuck in an elevator, and Spock is insufferable. And number one, who we know played by Majel Barrett in The Cage, she's the robotic one in that episode. Mm-hmm. Spock is a little more loosey-goosey. He laughs when he sees
they hadn't really determined at that point, because it's literally the very first episode. They're like, Vulcans might be goblins.
Yeah,
like,
we don't know. Yet. Yeah. We don't know. So in Q&A, they did a really clever job of saying, well, why do these character traits kind of shift a little bit? Why does Spock become the Spock that we know? Maybe it's some influence from number one. And I thought they did that in a clever way. Now, you don't have to agree with it. You don't have to agree with where they landed in it. But I bought it, and I bought it as a good way to not hammer you over the head with something that has to be strictly canon, something that has to say, no, on this day, Spock became this guy. No, it's just sort of dropping the seed and just saying, you know what? Spock probably got along with this person before he got along with somebody else in the crew, because maybe they share some traits, or maybe they share some ideas with each other that we might not agree with, but they both agree with. So go take a look at that and then go watch The Cage.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Good. Well, John, I've had a wonderful time talking to you. I'm
likewise.
dwarfed by your Star Trek knowledge and paraphernalia, which is extensive in both categories. Yeah. Thanks so much. Where can people find your podcast and your other projects?
Sure. Best way to look for us is at podcast.roddenberry.com. Currently, there are 7 shows on the Roddenberry Podcast Network. There are more to come. Working on stuff. Had a very interesting conversation with somebody today about a new show that we hope to launch within the next couple of months. So keep checking back there. And, if you just want to find me personally, I'm on, this is a throwback, I'm on Twitter as @DVD Geeks. Yes, I still have DVDs and Blu-rays. I know, so 2005 of me. And then you can find me on Instagram @Slow-Mo Gentleman, because the world is better at 120 frames per second.
I have not seen your Instagram. Is this? Yeah. I hope this is you in suits, because I've been told that your wardrobe. I mean, you look fantastic right now. But
thank you. I didn't put on the jacket today, but
things like that.
I do like outside of Star Trek, I have other interests. I love to travel. I love food. I always point out the food scenes in Star Trek. That's important to me. And I love clothes. So like when I travel, my souvenirs tend to be clothes. And I did this silly, ridiculous Instagram handle just under the premise that whatever you do will look cooler in slow motion, including vacuuming this office. There is a video of that. So check that out.
Nice. You can get your full dose of John. John, thank you.
Thank you so much, man. It's been a pleasure.
Hello, Nerd Army. Heaton here. Thank you for listening. And thank you for your stellar reviews on Apple and other podcasting platforms. That helps engorge this show to the point that new people find it. Thanks. Socks and Mittens writes, not only does this have the best title of all podcasts, it has great content too. You won't be disappointed. I assume Socks and Mittens is a nom de plume for Mitt Romney. Thank you, Senator, and keep the reviews coming. Now on to the next installment of Intergalactic Vagabonding. Every week, my friend Nick Sperduti and I do comedy on another world, and then we review it for your benefit. And this last week, we went to the planet Krypton, which is the home world of the Superman, who I'm not super familiar with, but he's like a caped crime fighter in New York or something. But anyway, the way the Superman works is because he's from a red star world. His sun is red. When he's on our planet with our yellow sun, he has all sorts of crazy superpowers. Well, it turns out that Nick, if you and I go to Krypton, we get the same thing because they got a red sun.
Don't I know it?
Yeah. About that.
You're just mad. Because I got to be me. For just a few minutes, I got to be me, and you couldn't handle it, Heaton. Always trying to lead the show, always trying to be the one in charge, and then finally I found it. I got to that one place where I could use the power that I always knew I had.
Okay, if that is the real you, then you are horrifying. You became like a global supervillain in the span of 48 hours. It was terrifying. Like on the way there, you and I were like, the biggest concern I had about you 72 hours prior to that was that I thought you were cheating at Uno on the flight over, right? And then cut to later, you've destroyed the world's banking system, you've thrown all of the gold into the ocean, and you held all of the world's leaders hostage before deciding that they were corrupt or something, and then just really, you really went overboard, buddy.
Here's what I'll say. First, I was cheating at Uno. Second,
knew it.
I did what I had to do. Okay? Yes, I destroyed the entire world's gold.
Yes.
Gold, what would you call it? Reserve.
Yeah.
The gold reserve.
You destroyed the world's gold reserve supply, yeah. And all of their world leaders. Don't leave that out. You destroyed all of the world leaders.
I was doing my best to fix their economic situation, which I think if anyone should appreciate it, it would be you, Mr. Economics.
Yeah, okay. Yes, I am in favor of fixing economies. I enjoy economics, as you know, Nick. However,
I do.
In your case, you fixed it, and this is a direct quote, through sheer will and strength and godlike powers to make the world as it should be, end quote. You said that a lot.
So I wasn't the most egalitarian person on the planet.
No.
I admit.
It was a spectacle to behold from beginning to end. Nick, did we find that out because you sneezed or something?
Well, I sneezed and accidentally took down a post office, but it was one of those accidental beams of some sort of laser.
Yeah, it was a laser sneeze. They even had a word for that.
Yeah, laser sneeze, and I quickly took out the local post office.
Which, and I gotta say, at that point, I was fine with that, because you know how I feel about post offices. So
Same.
I thought it was funny. It did not bother me in the slightest, but I didn't think it was going to keep escalating. Like, in my case, I basically indulged in benign hobbies while I had godlike superpowers. So, like, what did I do? I got really into ping pong. I have the ability to fly. I have super strength. I got really good at ping pong. I could knock a ping pong ball through a wall. And I got, to my credit, I was briefly a gold medalist and silver medalist in ping pong on the planet Krypton because I was so fast I could play myself, and I beat myself and won. But
that was until the Olympics committee decided to take that away because you were not, in fact, a Kryptonian.
Right. And then you destroyed of them, but
yes.
Throwing them into the ocean. And like just to paint the picture here, not like tossing them into the ocean, but throwing them into the ocean at such an incredible speed that they just blew apart like they'd hit cement from 50 stories. It was just ghastly. It was really horrific.
Yes, and it wasn't even the closest ocean.
No, it was...
it was a far ocean. It was the ocean farthest from where we were, specifically on the planet.
Yeah, but again, you got into like what you called, destroying corruption and weakness, again, through godlike superpowers, a phrase that you've frequently used on Krypton. I was like, well, I got laser vision. I guess I could get into LASIK surgery. So I, did a little bit of a side hustle. Started doing eye surgery for people. This seems like a good use of a superpower to me.
So while you used it for these minuscule tasks, I found some more dogmatic purpose and was able to create, through my godlike superpowers, a planet in which people like you and me could actually thrive, survive, and make it the way we've always wanted to make it. Isn't that something? I mean, I just feel like I did a good job. And yes, of course, I'll never be able to go back.
Yes, because of the war crimes.
All of the war crimes.
Because you killed both all of the world leaders, most of the world's bankers, and their Olympic committee.
Oh, because I rankled a few members of society.
Yes, you violated, as you phrased it, meaningless social norms for weak-minded sheep people. I meanwhile...
so you're telling me you did read my manifesto, because you told me you didn't, but you're mentioning a lot of what it said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. Yeah. No, I read your blog while we were there. Overall, I don't think I caused nearly as much damage, but I did completely and utterly get rid of the optometry industry because I was so good at laser surgery or LASIK surgery. There's actually been this economic recession that I apparently caused by putting out of business all the optometrists and eyeglass salesmen and contacts people and I had no idea how much of an economy involved eyeballs.
Who really ruined the world? You or me? I mean, yeah, sure. There's less buildings in it. And there's a few less leaders because of me. But you hit him where it hurt. You hit him right in the middle class, Shouldn't that be the thing that we're talking about here? Not my little adventure into some sort of overarching villainous sort of behavior. But no. Maybe we should look at the fact that you, Andrew Heaton, a champion of middle-class economics, destroying what could be, for many generations, any sort of wealth and prosperity.
Yeah. I don't feel good about that. And what actually really stings the most, Nick, is that you held the entire planet hostage. Like the entire planet you held hostage, and they did a poll. You are more popular on Krypton than I am. You're still more popular. People were like, you know what? He killed a lot of folks, but he got things done. He shook things up. He was that guy's about change. He's a reformer. That Heaton guy, what did he do? He just put a lot of people out of business. That's all Heaton did.
As long as you know you're as culpable as I am for what happened to Krypton.
You want to talk about how we managed to get out of there?
Yeah, well, I mean, you could talk about the fact that I was very clearly on my path to tear down everybody and everything.
Oh yeah, no, you were going to do the League, and I'm very glad that I stopped you there.
Because I was going to try to find all of the Wookiees who you hid.
Yes, I did hide them for good reason. You were going to give them blood transfusions from you to make them super Wookiees, so that we'd have flying Wookiees that could shoot lasers out of their eyes. Probably they could have handled it. Probably they would have come and joined me at my LASIK surgery center. But maybe they would have joined you as evil Olympic gods. So I was like, I don't want to take that risk. I'm just going to leave them in a secret glacier bunker.
I don't want to get into it, but yeah, you ended up.
Well, I got you that
convincing
hat.
Me, yeah, because of how good I looked in a
so people, so like on our planet, the Superman is allergic to kryptonite, and it takes away his
name's Superman.
You
keep calling him the Superman.
I thought it was like a surname, but for some reason it had an article.
Mr. Superman.
Yeah, the Superman. So excuse me, Nick. The Superman, if he has kryptonite, the Superman is allergic to it and he can't fly anymore. And I was like, well, I wonder if that works on Krypton as well. And I was right. There's this thing called blue kryptonite, which takes away our abilities. And so I had a haberdasher kind of build it into the brim of this fedora hat. Because when you and I first got there, before you had your laser sneeze and blew up that post office, we were walking through a flea market and you saw that fedora hat and you were like, that hat reminds me of Kojak or some other detective. I don't remember which detective it reminded you of, but it definitely reminded you of a detective. And you were like, oh, it's expensive. I don't want to get it. And I got you that hat, but I had that kryptonite in it, or that blue kryptonite in it. And if you put it on, no more superpowers. Like, I didn't even really trick you. I gave you the hat, and you, were genuinely thankful, and I got it to you as a friend or whatnot. But then I was like, by the way, I've lined the hat with blue kryptonite. If you wear the hat, you won't have any superpowers. And you were like, oh, man, but I look so good in this hat. So, there wasn't even any treachery there. It was just a deal of, if you want to wear the hat, you don't get to have superpowers.
I did lose what I had, which was an incredible ability and a whole planet at my fingertips, but I did it for the hat, and I appreciate it. And now I'll just live my boring life as an international fugitive, and just go from there, I guess, or universal fugitive, I guess.
Well, we all learned some valuable lessons, and overall, I guess it was a good trip. How are you gonna review this? What ranking are you gonna give Krypton?
Well, I liked it for what I could do there. But I don't know that I am ever going to go back.
Certainly not. You would be arrested immediately.
Yeah, no, they would get me right away.
100%.
So for that, 6.
Yeah, I would give it a 5. Really? It was okay. Well, I liked it and everything. Ping pong, really good. Enjoyed that bit.
Well, maybe we should also mention the fact that the former ping pong champion of the world actually lost all of his confidence by losing to you and
hanged himself. I know.
Hung himself
it was very
in his closet.
It was, again, the amount of trouble I caused. All right. Well, Nick, fun traveling with you as always. Glad to have you back without superpowers.
Yep, and cool to be on the same equal level of what we did was bad. That's cool as well.
Yeah, I don't want to keep relitigating this. So sure, yes, it is yes, we both. Yes, fine, okay. That's the show. Thank you, John Champion, you Grand Admiral of Star Trek fandom, for coming on. Thanks, Taylor Standridge, for flushing the tribbles out of the MP3 files, and thank you, Nick Sperduti, for our ongoing intergalactic adventures. Until next time, tally-ho!